In this video, I would like to talk about whether or not it is a good idea to propagate succulents in winter or when they are dormant. It is a question that comes up very often, and I do have a thing or two to say about it. So many succulents will propagate even in winter, and they will strike root or send out leaf babies. However, I never recommend it, and I am going to tell you the reasons why. The main one being that some succulent cuttings and leaves will not make it through the winter. So for instance, even though that our climate is fairly warm and a lot of succulents do propagate even throughout the colder months, there are some, such as this Xerozizius dangui or silver dollar vine, that just will not send roots even if it's in a fairly warm space. It could potentially be tricked by light, so if I gave it a little bit more light, so if I put up plant growing lights and gave it a few more hours during the day, it may be tricked, but otherwise the cuttings either die or they don't root until spring comes around. And same for the chain of hearts. When I used to have a website selling succulents online, this was the most popular plant and I just could not grow enough of it. So I always try to propagate it as much as I can, but no matter what I did in winter, it just would not grow. Same again, the cuttings would either die or they would just not root until warmer weather and the light changed, so it was lighter during the day for longer. And there are a few others that I can think about, but the hardy plants that normally grow without any problems, such as the Sedum rubrotinctum or the ghosty, so Graptopetalum paraguayans, a lot of sediverias and sedums. They kind of tend to grow during winter, but even they can struggle and the growth will be very, very slow. And another thing that can happen is that the cuttings will send roots and the roots will grow, but the plant above ground, so the leaves and the stalks, will not grow at all, so you will end up with just a lot of root and a very small plant. And you will have to deal with that in spring or in summer when the plant will be small on the top, so it will look like the plant's not growing at all, but it will be becoming root bound, so it can kind of trick you a little bit. Now, I am massive on waste not want not, so if I knock off even a few leaves, I do save them. And these guys here were knocked off at the beginning of our winter, so about a month and a half ago. And look, a lot of them did sprout. So you can see this Pachypedum compactum is sprouting, although there are a few leaves here that are not sprouting at all. They were knocked off at the same time. So this is another thing that I find with propagating during winter. I don't usually do it on purpose. If I do plant during winter, it is because I stuffed up, so I knocked off leaves or I broke a plant. I don't really want to chuck those away, so I do give them a chance and I do always plant them, or I save the leaves and see what happens. And this is exactly the case here. So these are just mishaps. I accidentally knocked off all of these leaves in the last month and a half, and as you can see, a lot of them did sprout, but I'm going to point out a couple. So for instance, this is Echeveria blue metal. So you can see this one's alright, but this one, and this one, they only have roots. Now, normally this is a succulent that has a really good success rate when it comes to leaves and cuttings. But when you do propagate it in winter, and this is the second reason why I don't like propagating in winter, and that is that a lot of the time the success rate will drop dramatically. So, half or even 75% will not make it, while just a few will. And to me, it's just not worth going into all that trouble with propagating over winter with so many of the leaves or cuttings not making it through. So yeah, that is one thing that can very much happen. Now, another reason is that the plants that do make it will grow so much slower than if you were to propagate during the growing season. So for most succulents, this would be from spring to beginning of autumn or even mid-autumn. It very, very much depends on where in the world you are and what kind of temperatures you have during spring and autumn. So for instance, we get a very warm spring usually, and also autumn. The temperatures could be comparable to summer temperatures in Europe. And so I can very comfortably propagate from end of the last couple of weeks of winter, which is August here, up until about beginning of May. So a lot of plants will still root and a lot of leaves would still send out leaf babies, and I would still have time to pot them up, and they would slowly grow through winter and then take off again in spring. But if you live in a climate where the weather is colder and you're prone to getting frost during spring or at the end of autumn, I would definitely not recommend doing it. Maybe if you're overwintering your plants indoors and you've got plant growing lights, you may be able to trick them, but honestly I think that it is best to leave it to nature and let it do its thing naturally. So let the plants have the dormant season, the dormant winter months, and then when it's growing naturally, just, you can go bonkers and just propagate left, right and center, which is exactly what I do. As soon as I see the plants growing, I start propagating like crazy. And in a few weeks time I will be showing you exactly that, because I've got a lot of orders for Christmas, so I have to plant out a lot. Another thing that I want to come back to is the plants that usually don't do very well with their cuttings, and they either don't root at all or the cuttings wait until spring comes along. But if you are doing more drastic methods of propagating, such as beheading, so where you cut off the top of the plant and leave the bottom to encourage new growth, you may lose both if you are propagating over winter. So your top, the head, may not root, and the bottom, because it is dormant, it may die. I have seen it happen a few times, and it's definitely a possibility. If you are doing things like that over winter, I would definitely not recommend it. It's just best to wait till spring, when it's almost guaranteed that both will survive and you will get the top rooted and the bottom will give you some new growth. So yeah, as you can see, it is entirely possible to propagate succulents in winter, but as I said, I would advise against it. And that is pretty much all I wanted to say today. I hope this video was useful. You can let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you all next time. Thank you so very much for watching.